I hadn't really noticed.
Now
Good
we're
afternoon,
live.
good morning, good evening. Now we're live, yeah, wherever you are in the world. Here we are. We were just discussing, what is that really what we were discussing? But let's start with the elephant in the room, which I spent a lot of time on Twitter saying, for God's sake, don't switch on your hobby drone. You'll be tracked. You'll be shot down. You'll be found. There'll be trouble with any. I thought it was an insane notion to do that. But now it seems it really is. It's rolling out, seeming like there's one of two things here. Either they didn't bring their counter US gear with them, or they bought the counter US gear that they bought from established vendors, and it really doesn't work. I mean, which would it be?
Which has got to be, it's very bad news for the Russian military, because all their attack helicopters now will have to be grounded because there could be one or two recreational drones in the air. They can't take that risk. Surely not even in time of war.
God. This is going to be an interesting program for sure.
It always is, Patrick.
I know, but this one I think is going to be a good one. Especially we got 3 old timers on here, and I want to talk about. I want to talk about this because one thing you are right. You are on. See everybody on Twitter, and everybody's got an opinion on this deal. But really, even before you went live, you started talking about some of this technology, and man, I want to jump in the Wayback Mobile, the Wayback AAM, and start talking about this stuff because what we're seeing now is this proliferation of consumer technology in the battlefield. Now, 20 years ago, people were talking about, you had to be like an evil genius to come up with some sort of missile in your garage. And after talking to the town council, they did say that they'll go as far as maybe evil, not so much on the genius part.
Yes.
Yes. However,
I think malicious moron was the term that was bandied about.
I like that.
I like that one. I like that one a lot.
I know. Maybe you need to get a nameplate for your desk because that was
malicious
moron.
Like that one. Yes.
Really? Yeah. Okay. You're coming up in the world. But now the reality is, and so even talking about this technology so long ago in the Wayback Machine, I know everyone on this in this program talked about what are you gonna do when this stuff shows up, and it's here now.
And but the thing is, it's $30 on eBay.
Well, that's my point. So it's the best laid plans of mice and men. Okay, so what this is going to show, and it goes back to in earlier iterations of the program, we were talking about resting on the laurels of the Cold War and 40, 50, 60 years ago, where you could control people with things like sanctions, or you may not be able to import stuff or whatever else. But now you get on, Alibaba or Amazon or Trade Me or whatever, and you get whatever you want, and you get it for $30 or $300 or $500 or whatever. And have you guys seen the TikTok videos of the people, starting up the Russian armor? Like, to me, that sounds like a really good way to catch one of those javelin missiles. But
yes, for yourself. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
This adds a whole new dimension to the term Milspec now, doesn't it? Milspec is like, it's consumer grade now.
Well,
but there's an awful lot of. Sorry, Patrick, but I'll go down the radio line. So the $30 Baofeng is nowhere near as good as the $300 Yaesu or ICOM. But that $300 Yaesu or ICOM is probably a lot better than the $3,000 military radio equivalent from a radio standpoint. The only thing that the Milspec one will be a really solid metal case, and it'll be in green. But technology-wise, big writing. That's right. Yeah, but technology-wise, the really Milspec is almost meaningless. It doesn't buy you a much.
It's like aviation. It gives you the ability to charge 4 times the actual price.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there is a certification process, but the thing with SUS News. So I did talk to. I've been talking to people that are, let's say, attached with the government complex.
Yeah.
Let's just put it like that. And they do read the SUS news. It's pretty. It's like, well, where'd you find me? I'm reading that Patrick's rant section right now. I'm like, ew. All right, if that's what you must. But the thing is really they're looking for DJI capabilities at a DJI price point, and I'm like it's like the cheap. I don't want to say it's like I don't want to liken it to anything negative, but the thing with it is people don't understand how that is all back end loaded with PRC funding and a huge ecosystem and all the rest of that. And it's like, well, how come we can't have that here? Well, we can't have that here because we're not playing by the same rules. And you're not going to get $3 motors. You're not going to get, $10 radios and whatever else unless you're ready to play ball with the Chinese.
Well, we've watched. America did have quite a good motor manufacturers, speed controller manufacturers, and it's still got a few, but they haven't ramped up. And the hobby, as it were, has been allowed to decay under vilification, and that knowledge hasn't quite gone, but it hasn't got to the point. You probably could have $3 motors in America if everyone was only buying American motors.
But just get a bunch of Mexicans up from the border and get them to make them.
The 3DR model.
But the thing is manufacturing in the United States, there's a couple of unfair advantages, and one of them in California, we have heavy duty environmental regulations. I mean, you can't compete. I mean, Tesla left, they're out, we're gone. You cannot compete in that way. And then the other thing you're not going to compete with, as I tell the people, like say, that are associated with the organization, is you're not going to compete with compulsory labor. Not happening. So you want all of that, but then and then it goes back to, and I've been harping on this regulatory thing for 20 years, right? And you're probably tired of hearing it. I know everybody else is tired of hearing it, but there's a big move in the military to have something that's dual use that you can use in the military and you can sell commercially, right? But there's no outlets, man. You have this, everyone thinks that a drone is a quadcopter,
Yeah.
Airplanes make money while they're in the air. That's how the business model works. And you can't do everything you want to do in a 12 or 15 minute flight envelope. You're just not going to be able to do that. And you got when DJI raises their price, if it's a tariff thing or whatever, $200. Oh God, people are screaming and complaining, and you want me to build you 100 widgets. So how do you think I'm going to be able to bring that price point down to $3 a motor?
Well,
it's a problem.
But before DJI got angry for talking about it, they were already on selling 7,000 units a day. So they were selling as many units almost as a good sized military would have all year.
Right,
smaller stuff, obviously, but 7,000, and then 13,000 was when they gave up or got angry. That's a lot of units. That's a lot of cost absorbed in many units.
Well, there's several other factors that you have to when you're contracting. You're going to have to supply parts and service and technical support and things like this. And I'm going to use the Black Hornet as an example. Are you guys aware of the Black Hornet? It was Prox Dynamics, and then FLIR bought them.
Yeah.
And Teledyne bought FLIR. So the system is great. It's a little, like so, with a couple of real helicopters, albeit they're 5 inches long, but they have EO and IR capabilities.
Little silverlit things, aren't they?
Yeah, and they can fly. I mean, since it has a swash plate, it can, people laugh at it, but it can fly in wind and rain. I've seen it. We did it on drone TV at Oslo. It was flying in the rain. It's cold in Oslo. But they want like $180,000 for the system. Now, if you could sell those all over the world, which you can't because they're ITAR protected and all the rest of that stuff, you might be able to sell that $13,000 a day and bring that price down, to I don't know, $18,000 a pop or whatever, So it's not really a business model that's achievable because you can't. Who are you going to sell it to? That's what happened here in the United States. manufacturers here couldn't sell overseas, and even happened to 3DR. Remember, they got
Yeah.
popped for that.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, that's I'm afraid, America's had shot its own industry in the foot with ITAR right from.
That's why wars are good for business. You can only use a
well-
bullet once. You got to replace it.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and that cost plus contracting is the model now, and that is like, that makes its own gravy. Even if it doesn't work, bring it out. We'll pay you to fix it. I mean, where do you get business like that, except in the software?
But I think it will be. It is a bit of a sort of a pivotal moment and we're beginning to see it, and nearly all of the shots are DJI stuff, which is just from both sides. It's which is fantastic. If you're selling the gear and you can sell to both sides, well, hey for away.
Can you put bombs on them?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. That'll be the next thing, the DJI armament pack, for military customers only.
It's already there. It's kind of already there, isn't it?
I was kind of surprised you didn't get Kevin Finisterre on, because he's tweeting some interesting stuff. Gary's tweeting some interesting stuff. And Bruce is tweeting some interesting stuff. And one thing I will say, so Bruce, you came up with a good point where the Russians could just say, hey, you can put up a TFR and ground the Ukrainian drone air force. But then they would be grounding their own equipment, unless, of course, they bought that hack software that the guys in Russia came up with.
That sort of thread's slightly annoyed me, because that software is universal. That's been come up with across the world. It's just quite trendy to say it's from Russia.
But we used the Russian hack on Tim's Phantom, and it worked really well. You just cover the top in tinfoil, and away it goes. Brilliant.
Well, it's just, I think it's because it's kind of, geopolitically relevant, to say, well, that hack software from Bangladesh, it's obscure. We're talking about the Russians here.
Did you see Pakistan is siding with Russia in this?
Yeah.
Imran Khan. Yeah. I thought, ooh, this is going to be interesting.
Well, and how do the Turkish drones fit into this? So, I mean, that's
doing very well. They're doing very well for the Ukrainians, and probably the Russians as well. That's the thing,
if you're an arms merchant, you've got it made. I mean, every side needs bombs, bullets, and drones these days.
As you say, only have to fire it once, and then you've got to buy another. But they've got it's the ore selling, or the standard Russian ones. I can't remember the name, but they have got some of those on the field, but they've not really come out to play. And it almost speaks to, and it swings back around to the Baofeng radios, is that they're unprepared. They didn't have all the community. If you go to war, and they didn't have all the communications in place. They don't have the way of getting those drones. It's no good taking them, driving them all the way somewhere and not being able to use them because you haven't got fuel, chargers, radios, power, whatever. It's just meaningless.
Aren't you surprised that there's such little use of drone technology in this battle? I mean, I would have thought drones being the weapon of the future. It should have been drones everywhere, cruise missiles, just everyone sitting back in their offices pushing buttons and wait until all the smoke had cleared. But no, they've got so many feet on the ground and all the problems that involves logistically and exposure to risk. But I'm surprised that drones are just playing such a small role. Even for the visuals we were talking before, we've got satellite imagery. Those Maxar satellite pictures are amazing.
They are amazing, and they speak not only to battlefield amazing, but to me they also speak to, oh yeah, I'm a farmer. I don't need to get all that expensive gear. Look at that Maxar image; it's fantastic. That will probably do the job for what I need. It's strange all around. I wonder what the truth of it all will be when hopefully it comes to...
Truth is the first victim of war, isn't it? We'll never know.
War,
the victor gets to write the history.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, there is other things that I think come into play on this. I personally feel like they went off a little half-cocked.
It definitely looks like it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into really the politics of this deal, but I don't think this, before they gave out the go code that what the response was going to be or whatever. Because it definitely looks to me like what has gone in has been some sort of like advanced reconnaissance type of thing, and you see these columns coming on now, which back to Bruce's point, anybody with a drone that's got some Hellfire-esque type missiles on it could have a turkey shoot, on the road there. So, I don't know exactly what's going on with that. I do, I have to hand it to the Ukrainians using all of this, let's say, commercial off-the-shelf technology to kind of bolster themselves. Because anybody that thinks about, I'm going to go down to the police station, pick up a gun, 200 rounds, and I'll see you out on the front lines against, regular Russian army troops. You got bigger stones than I got, right off the bat, because that's, you're talking about real live action out there. And so my hat's off to him on that deal. And it will be interesting how this pans out. But one other thing I did want to talk about, even, we've talked about the Chi-Coms deal and all the rest of that. And it's coming out here in the United States that the United States government shared intelligence with the Chinese on this deal. And the Chinese shared the intelligence with the Russians. So, I mean, is this going to be the same deal with the drones? Is there, potential that they're going to be collecting data and giving data to the Russians? Are you going to be able to track people's cell phones? Are you going to be able to track the drones?
As night follows day. The Chinese have got a better intelligence picture of the battlefield than we've got. So, we're launching Global Hawks, got things in big orbits costing X dollars an hour. And they've chucked out things that people have bought themselves with their own money and then sending the data.
It's definitely the democratization of intelligence gathering. That and the cell phones, they were telling people, turn off your cell phone so they don't know where there are groups of people or whatever. It's a very interesting thing. And then I did want to talk too. So, Kevin had posted some deal where there's some group of people that are open sourcing active radar. It's
extraordinary. Did you see that, Bruce? Using the Sentinel images from the in fact, Bruce, if you could explain to me exactly, I'll find it and then you can explain for dullards, that's me, exactly. Well, I think I understand how it works, but my word, the implications of it is open source satellite imagery of which happens every 3 days of the entire planet can out where you've got your air defense radars. That's like they weren't expecting that when that happened.
Unintended consequences. Yeah, this it was tweeted on Twitter, wasn't it? That image with the radar beams. I assume they're using radar imaging, and therefore the transmissions are showing up as hotspots, and enables you, just give you a position really.
It puts bands. I'll put it up. You keep talking.
Well, I'm very shy. I don't like talking very much.
No. Patrick, all right. Patrick will manage it somehow. I actually showed it to primary school children today. That's how cool I thought it was.
Well, what it's
13-year-old would like it.
What it's showing is, again, back to the let's say the Cold War laurel resting, these systems that were high-tech weapons that cost, millions and millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars to develop, build, and refine are now being defeated by, your democratized technology.
That's it, really, isn't it? If you look at technology across the years, something that cost you like computers. The first computer, first IBM PC was like $16,000 in New Zealand. And now for a tiny fraction of that price, you get a computer that's 1,000 times more powerful. When you look at most of these weapons were developed in the Cold War to service the needs of the Cold War, and they've just been kept in bunkers and online, certainly from the nuclear perspective, it shows you don't have to spend much these days to defeat all that old technology that costs so much. And this is a great example. It's just like, a piece of technology readily available is effectively disempowering stuff that might have cost millions of dollars to set up.
Well,
sorry, as you carry on, Patrick. Sorry, I butted in.
I'm just also, we're going back to the kid that's tracking, Elon Musk's plane and moving on to bigger, better things. What used to be the domain of the rich, or what used to be the domain of first world countries, and these, let's say, secretive technologies, man, it's all coming to a close. And I do believe that these Western countries are starting to realize there are some huge gaps in their capabilities, and they're being run by people spending, thousands instead of millions.
Well, this was the whole idea of this was the low-cost cruise missile idea. What's the Raytheon Tomahawk, millions of dollars, and you can build something for $5,000, which doesn't have the capabilities, but it's close enough that if you spent the same amount of money building those low-cost cruise missiles, you would overwhelm the defenses of any nation with these things. And it doesn't matter. You've got so many of them, you don't have to have pretty accurate targeting. Just the fear factor alone, like the Russian V weapons, the German V weapons in World War II, it changes the whole game.
Well, it's like, a whole swarm of cluster munitions. That cluster bomb has been, we don't want to use that because it's not, humane or whatever. But now you're talking about a whole, okay, well, they're not all coming together. They're traveling together, but they're not in the same vessel. And when you see, this is the thing too, and you made this point first, Gary, with in the beginning of this was the counter UAS thing. So, A, we just left it all at home. B, it doesn't work, or C, there's just too much action on the field.
Well, this is using. I've put this Bellingcat. I've put it in the comments. Hello, Matt. For anyone that comes to look at it, it's quite extraordinary. It's using the Sentinel synthetic aperture radar images, and once we let Bruce understand it all, he can explain to me very, very slowly what actually. I think I know what it means, but I then say my foolish version of what it is. But it's flipping clever, and that's all the Swedish radar sites that he's revealed with it. So, as you said, that would have been millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of sites. It's just that it reminds me a little bit of ADSB and how that's blown apart the paid model in America. All the people that put up the towers and people with Raspberry Pis and software-defined radios, and enough of them get better coverage. In England, the Royal Air Force will tell you that 360 radar, which is a people power sort of setup, has way better low level coverage than they do. They'll tell you, but they'll openly tell you that. But lots of people won't openly tell you that.
It's like using Google Earth to look over your neighbour's fence, isn't it?
I suppose so. Yeah. Sorry, I busted. Sorry.
So, if you were going to, now you don't even have to be a, let's say, world power Air Force to figure out how, where that soft underbelly is and how to get your forces in. So I think this is another thing that we're seeing with technology now is it is harder to, let's say, sell that state-run propaganda that like you're moving in, you're kicking ass, you're taking names, because we are seeing that things are not going as swimmingly for the forces invading as they would have us believe. The other thing I think that's interesting with their propaganda is they've opened up the whole box. Weapons of mass destruction, genocide, racism. The whole gambit of what the United States has been using to run all around the Middle East and do whatever they want to do. And now the Russians are trying it, and their propaganda is not working out so well. And you look again, TikTok, cell phones, Twitter, drones.
Well, it's hard to beat someone that's won Strictly Come Dancing, voiced Paddington Bear, and is a comedian. Because weirdly enough, though, that's a little bit. Ronald Reagan had a little bit of this, where his sort of showbiz training will really help getting the message out. And he's on top of he as a world leader is probably the most plugged into, or one of the most plugged into, the idea of TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and all the other things. So that's why they're winning. And he'll have.
Are you talking about Biden? Have you seen his TikTok channel? It's fantastic. It's just him snoozing.
That would be my channel. But they're switched onto it, so they're definitely winning. How much of whatever we're seeing is true, who will know? As we've already said, the fog of war. But as far as the messaging goes, they're on top. They're definitely winning that war.
I would agree. He's I guess he was a comedian or some sort of performer. Well, some of us are professionals, and
Yeah.
some of us work for tips and feed the artist. No, yeah. So he was in some sort of entertainment field, and it's working, and it's inspiring. Sorry, Vladimir Putin, but you have about not a lot of
Vlad's a social media star. I've seen him on a horse. I've seen him wrestling bears. He's right up there with the best of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, he's got to get back out there then, and maybe a little judo or whatever.
But doesn't he have Parkinson's? He's got some kind of disease. Has he some degenerative disease, which would be concerning because it could be he's a guy that's at the end of his useful life and thinking, well, I'm taking everyone with me.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, that this is another, okay, so we're all old enough to remember the Cold War. And, the kids talk about their adversity, or whatever. And there was always in the back of my mind, that you may have had those drills at school. I don't know how it was for you guys. We're like, okay, and if you hear the siren, you got 10 minutes to get over here and,
Tuck and duck,
eat a sandwich. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's going to get warm. Did you bring some sunblock? Because
have an iodine tablet.
Yeah, exactly. Degrees Kelvin, but man, it's going to get toasty. So, I got adversity and somebody misgendered me and I feel bad about myself or whatever else. This is a whole different kettle of fish. This is, they're like telling people they're getting on nuclear alert and all the rest of the stuff. So I'm having that flashbacks to the Cold War, so it's all fun and games now, but let's see what happens here. It could get out of hand, and I don't want to sound alarmist, but
well,
I remember who remembers the Cuban Missile Crisis? I remember the whole world was kind of like on a knife edge. There was this 62, I think. I was old enough to remember that, and I remember my parents were deeply concerned. The newspapers were full of headlines of the world teeters on the brink of nuclear war, and we had was it Khrushchev and Kennedy going face to face with, and the sort of, they both had nuclear weapons, and fortunately Khrushchev blinked and backed off. But that's the sort of thing that could happen here. We could have this nuclear brinkmanship, and I don't know. Khrushchev was a fairly sane guy, had strange principles, but he was basically sane. I'm not sure Putin qualifies as sane anymore, especially after this latest thing in Ukraine.
Well, either way, but that Dr. Strangelove was supposed to be a comedy, not prophecy.
Yeah, not a documentary. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's yeah, and he's certainly backed into a corner. I find myself utterly astounded. I tried to say that Fane that we cheated in a Nimrod once. It was a maritime patrol aircraft in the UK. There was an exercise off Spain in the Bay of Biscay. So we exercise started at 10. So we got airborne at 8, got high, get all the sensors going, and we'd identified all the targets before they switched the beer fridges off at 10 o'clock. And so we knew where everything was. And that was purely on the RF signature of the boats and the various bits of equipment. People shouldn't underestimate. I know it says your machine only goes 9 kilometers or whatever your DJI thing is, but I would like to lay a bet that the real grown-ups can see them miles away and work out what they are, and then also join the dots with the car you're driving and this and that and the other and all sorts of clever things. So in my head, that's what was going to happen, and why I wouldn't switch on a hobby. And of course, you've got to remember, hobby transmitters were used in the Sandy Wars to detonate IEDs, and so the units do have detectors for 2.4, 72, 35, all the popular frequencies, and all units have handheld detectors for that if they're going off into that sort of.
Mind you that those ICM bands are now so noisy. How would you pluck out a particular signature from all that noise? You've got Wi-Fi, you've got baby alarms, you've got all sorts of things. It becomes difficult. The signal may be there, but the noise floor is now so high. I think that it's not as bad.
It's probably come on a bit since the Sandy Wars, even, because what year, I can't think what years those were, but.
Well, maybe they should just tell all the Ukrainians to open the microwave ovens, override the lockout switch, turn them on and walk away.
Well, either that or, in the old days, they used to say, the best way to catch a missile was to turn the radar on. You flick that switch on.
Yeah.
So, we'll just use AI to figure out who's making what sound. And then I just say you just start, let loose the missiles, and if we lose a few people, oh well, No, but I do think that drives right around to the next conversation that we need to have. So you have the democratization of all of this intelligence gathering, right? So we're going to have these drones with RID. We're going to have, all these other sensors in it, like I said, tying into the cars and the phones and all the kids, even talking to the younger generation. And I've told them, now that the war on terror is over, pull down the flag, and we left Afghanistan, I think that we need to start rolling back all of this war on terror stuff because it never happened. And they will tell you, it was because we had all of this in place.
We're never going to do that. That's allowed us around the world to get so many laws in place.
That's right. As the war against COVID winds down, we've got to wind something up.
Yes.
Well, exactly.
Sadly, probably, yes.
I'm a dreamer, and I want to go back to the days when I didn't have the government spying on me for no good reason. But most of the kids now are conditioned that they're like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm just on TikTok and, whatever, and I'm doing my thing. But we're starting to see, where you're going to get singled out. And, the other thing that I think could happen, it's interesting to see how this deal will play out. But, even with the Chinese involvement, and, we're pulling the sanctions routine on these countries now. And I'm just waiting, when the Chinese are going to make their move to become the superpower or whatever else, and they decide to move off the petrodollar. And Iran, we've had Iran under these sanctions where supposedly they couldn't do anything. Remember, crippling sanctions. They got drones, they're working on nukes, they got all kinds of stuff. They're selling through back channels, and it's not all Bitcoin and NFTs. So they've got their thing. So when is it, when they're going to move, you're going to get the Chinese, the Russians, and the Iranians are going to say, you know what, you take your petrodollar and you have a nice day. And now we're going to do our own thing. And I think that's where you're going to see the balance of a power turn. I don't see where, the world can buy Russian oil and then say we're going to sanction you. What do you think is worth more money, vodka or oil?
It depends how many you've already had.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, well, I guess it could be like, event specific, but those are some issues. And then who, it's the same deal. So, so something like that happened in a Western country, right? And people are like, we're going to use our drones to get intelligence for this, and the Chinese say, turn it off.
All they've got to do is take down Link. That's it. No one can take off.
And the party's over.
But they're running the party for both sides now, so they're not going to switch it off because it can't be that granular. One would think.
Well, I don't know. They could be running on their own system. It's the same thing. We had here in the United States. So law enforcement was buying, DJI drones, and they had incidents here in the United States, large law enforcement things, and they tried to use their DJI drones. They still had an active scene. And they were locked out. They couldn't fly.
And yet some companies managed to buy, allegedly, from the manufacturer, unlock USA, please, or unlock the world. And they did for large clients. So there could be a great deal of DJI drones completely unlocked for the entire world out in the wild, numbers unknown, possibly many, 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 many. And
how does that tie back into, so that's part of the one of the regulatory beefs. How does that tie back in? So those people are all just, free range. They do whatever they want. Who's going to catch them, And so who are all these laws for? Is this same deal, here in the United States? We just, it was another gun violence deal. The guy was not supposed to have, a weapon. So you have all of these laws for people that abide by laws, and even the FAA is trying to say now that the FARs are all working. See, we haven't had any fatalities because the FARs are working. The regulations are working. And I say, go over to YouTube and watch for the afternoon, and it will invalidate that concept 100%.
Yeah, I almost bet you could go every day and find a video every day of some massive indiscretion. I bet you could. That would be a good project for a student. That'd be a Really good project for. Well, yeah, you can provide that, but be really good. I don't know whether our heads are going. They're increasing in size as we go along here. I'm going to sit back a bit more. This is not cool.
Well, that's
rules. Well, we all know rules are just What's your?
they're for people that follow them. That's what rules are for.
And by definition, by the very definition, they have no effect on people who don't follow the rules, and they're the people who are the problem. So rules are, what is the point? So when you're broken.
That's another thing there's been a change in society. Where people don't really follow the rules. Or consequences for your actions. There's really not a lot of consequences for your actions these days. People get away with a lot of stuff. The other thing that I'm going to, go back into the regulatory part of this is, so we have a capabilities gap, and the government here is really starting to come to the conclusion that yes, we have a serious capabilities gap. People, they're not even looking at AeroVironment products. So you remember back in the day, when they were really starting to, we're on the arc or whatever, and they let those DoD vendors drive the bus. And they drove the bus right off the cliff. Because for many years, and you could probably do it now, although it'd still be kind of tough if you weren't coloring outside of the lines, to develop a system like ScanEagle. It gets out of visual line of sight so fast because it's got to travel so fast to get enough lift to stay
flying.
Yes. And so you would maybe have, until just even a few years ago, you would have had a hard time trying to develop something. That you could use for military use. And we're in that group now, so people are talking about, FPV craft, and you remember the 550 document that came out of the ARC. I mean, a lot of people, I want to do another podcast about that because I actually am friends with one of the guys that was instrumental in that on Twitter. That was like a last minute save for FPV. Luckily, we were able to get the AMA on board, and somebody at the FAA was willing to at least type up some sort of draft. And it was a fourth quarter thing, and it allowed for something. A lot of people, it's too restrictive, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to fly at a field or whatever. Well, at least there is a legal, let's say, silo for you to do FPV. And if we don't put this together, there's not going to be a legal FPV silo. However, we all know that the FPV thing is really. How many people do you think are doing FPV legally?
Or just forget legally, just doing FPV.
I don't see anyone doing it legally around here.
No.
Well,
I don't suppose. Or I'll pin a tail on a donkey of people just doing FPV. 250,000 worldwide. I don't know. What's your number, Bruce?
Yeah, there's not a lot. You only have to look at sales of FPV gear to realize that there's a lot of people have tried it and given it away, and a lot of people just, it is a very, very niche market. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, we're a niche, and that's a niche within a niche.
And what do you, really, do you think that any of the, like here, everybody's, well, not ever, I don't want to, paint anyone with the broad brush, but, there's FCC issues, so with frequencies, there's issues. I mean, you're really all flying beyond visual line of sight as soon as you put the goggles on.
Yeah.
That's why we have an observer. That's why you have to have a visual observer. But the FCC is a big one because the power levels for analog especially are really, really low. People are just all over the world flying in breach of their own local RF regulations. Every country just about. I think in Australia you're allowed 2 milliwatts or something. And who's flying on 2 milliwatts? Nobody. Digital has helped a bit, but even then they're not flying in the prescribed bands. It is largely illegal. I'm surprised that the regulators haven't come down and used that as leverage to squash it.
Well, our friends over at the FAA don't like to talk to anybody outside of their orbit, i.e. 5G. So, you do have some other issues there. I don't know. There's a lot of issues, but I mean, with that, so do you think it's just such a niche thing? To me, if I was going to do that, I mean, I do know people that do it. I don't really do FPV, but they look at it like cross-country flying. And they really want to go out and you want to see new scenery. You don't want to go to the hobby park and see the same scenery, unless maybe you're doing a few tricks or whatever. You want to make yourself nauseous. I don't know. But
It's old man talking, vertigo. Ooh.
Yeah.
Young people like me, we don't have a problem with this, mate. I stand up and do it. It's no problem.
Yeah, I got issues with that. But so there's that and other capabilities. We went over some of the other problems, but some of these capabilities that are coming out of the hobby field or whatever, with electronics that are cobbled together from China or whatever else, are leaving a gap for us. I'm a noob.
Oh,
I
there's definitely within that FPV thing. There's definitely some very capable machines and very capable video systems coming out, control systems. No, if you were after a military product and you said, I want this, and this, I bet most probably 7-inch size FPV quads probably have most of the capability you're looking for out of the Chinese box.
Well, and that's another thing, is you want it out of the box. A lot of people, and you guys I know did this too. When you talk about the early days of drones, and remember being on the cutting edge, you were buying stuff by the week. This is the cutting edge motor. This is the battery you need. This is the stuff that you need to cobble together. So every weekend you guys are building so you can fly something new. And the cutting edge, I think, is still there. There's people cobbling together systems, but that requires that you have a dedicated space, that you have tools. And for those of you that have children, the tools seem to move around the house and out in the yard and wherever else, frustrating. But anyway, not everybody wants to do that. That was kind of the thing I told Chris Anderson about even the do-it-yourself drone idea, was really, I don't want to program stuff. I want to go out and I want to, fly it. I'm already got my hands full cobbling together systems. So, are these cutting edge systems? Are you ever going to, be able to buy stuff off the shelf that's really custom or cutting edge? Or is it always
if you draw a line under your specification, then yeah, I'm pretty sure you would.
Well, you've been here long enough to know that what the specification is, Gary, and it's everything right now for nothing.
Yes.
I wanted a discount on that.
That is the story of the drone industry. Well, what do you want to do? Everything. When do you want to do it? No. How much do you want to pay? Nothing.
Well, it's such a shame we're not going to get the full truth, because it is a war. Because this is the first SUAS war, if you will, the first one in which there are multiple vendors that you could have chosen from for your sub 20 kilo machines.
But I want to hold everything to account here, because, as I said, we've got the Ukrainian forces got recreational multi-rotor drones at their disposal. We got these Russian military helicopters. If they cannot bring down at least one of those helicopters with those drones, then I don't want anyone telling me, these drones are a risk to helicopters, because if you're actively trying to bring one down with a drone, you can't do it. The odds of you doing it by accident are infinitesimal.
Well, that's good the regulations are working, Bruce.
Well, another thing it's all very fishy. The lines of Russian helicopters flying nose to tail, going, one after another, not slowly, and not at a particularly low level either. I'm astonished that not more haven't been shot down.
Because they got all the missiles and everything be given to them by the various other Western military powers. They're pushing their munitions in there so quickly, and they've got all these stingers and things, and yet they're not bringing many down.
Well, that's another thing that's really interesting here is, the Ukrainians have a lot of, press cold board types, Eastern Bloc equipment. And so it's a lot of the same equipment, maybe earlier generations, maybe not so good and things like that. But it's really, man, it's something different. This one's really kind of different, as far as what's going on, capabilities. I'm sure a lot of the training was kind of the same, so it's interesting. It's interesting to see what's going on here. That's why I say I don't know that the Russian thing was really all put together before they moved.
Well, it's always going to be hard if you're coming in as the aggressor and some people are fiercely defending their country, and that's why when people were jumping, send your hobby drones and all that, I was thinking, no, fly kites, put sticks in the ground, dig trenches, park tractors. Did you see that farmer towing away one of those things? He's hooked it up and towed it away with his tractor. But yeah, take one, turn it around on the junction, leave it there, all that sort of thing. There's a lot more things you could be doing before you get your hobby drone out.
Which is why I'm surprised they've used so little air. I mean, they've used missiles and things, but where was the carpet bombing? Where were the attack helicopters? Where was all the paratroopers? They didn't use much air. Normally, most wars these days are won or lost in the air, and they haven't done a lot. Are they just afraid of all that munitions that the West has brought in that can bring down those aircraft, or what's going on? I don't understand this war.
Yeah.
Well, even early on, you would think that, the Europeans, I mean, my first thing was like, we're going to close the airspace. It's over, no flying in here. And they didn't, maybe that was a miscalculation. Maybe they thought they were going to close the airspace. But I do, I want to go back to Gary's thing there too, with the kites and whatever else. I mean, you're going asymmetrical. And we saw, what the sandal wearers in Afghanistan were able to do to the Americans.
Can you be more inclusive, please? I don't like these racist terms.
Well, I'm just only calling them that because that's the preferred footwear of the,
And can you use gender-neutral pronouns, please, as well?
I'll try. Them and thou. Those are my personal.
We might have woke someone up.
Possibly, but the thing is, even on that asymmetrical level, I think, like Gary said, if you distill it down, it's like, how are you going to overcome kites on strings? How are you going to overcome these most rudimentary systems? And I think it is good. I do think we're going to, that they are doing this and they are using this technology. But I think what we are going to see come out of this is, I think people are going to be found. We'll have to see how this drags on and what happens.
So I consider my drone flying to be like, part-time military territorial training for future wars. If they don't let us do that, how can we act like a guerrilla force if we become invaded? We're an essential part of the defense.
You're going to have your training. Yeah.
I wonder if you can write that off on your taxes, Bruce.
Am I supposed to pay taxes? Why didn't someone tell me this earlier?
I'm thinking of it as a write-off, now.
But we're not gonna find out about it because it's Russia, and let's hope that they get the heck out of Dodge soon, Russia. We're definitely on Ukraine's side here, but we're not going to find out just what the level of corruption was within their forces. Because if they're turning up with $30 Baofeng radios, it makes you think, I wonder if they've sort of bought them themselves because there wasn't any working gear. So, the unit buys a box of Baofengs. Things like that, where the corruption the money's been spent.
I wonder how many of those Russians with AK-47s are actually holding Norenkos.
Yes. Well, maybe, but it's. I think with the other story that we're likely to find in time is the amount of corruption that happened in the Russian forces, and the money wasn't there for whatever the bit of kit was, and this is being found out now, but it's still horrific. I understand it has gone a bit carpet bomby tonight over there. So,
but even just fuel in the tanks. Fuel in the tanks would have helped, wouldn't it?
Well, but nobody lines their tanks up in there. Only very, very confident people would have a 40-kilometer line of armor, because
those a real disaster on your hands there.
Yeah. I mean that's
there's been breakdowns so that the whole convoy is halted by a tank broken down in the middle of the road. It doesn't make very good strategic sense to do that.
Well, no. The other thing with this too is that if we look at the last history here, like with the Crimea, and they rolled in there, and there was sanctions and whatever else. Was this the Poland move? Is this where they thought if this was going to be the Poland moment? I don't know, but I mean the people in the Crimea have got to be thinking, hey man, what happened to us? We just got the sanctions. Where was the big outcry? And I guess where I'm going with that is really the thing could boil over into other places, and I don't think it'll probably get worse before it gets better, unfortunately.
No, don't worry. The West has a powerful store of rhetoric they can use.
Very disappointed myself in the action that was taken. Very hard to dislodge. After the action, it's hard to dislodge people. Look at, from the Afghanistan point of view, their country was, under occupation for 20 years,
And see the damage that they estimate 2% of the population of Afghan did to all the forces based there with IEDs, with all the simple tricks. You imagine 20 years of simple tricks from a Ukrainian people that is like 98% of the people are going to be having a go at it. It'll make Afghan look like,
hard to imagine.
And they don't have the handicap of wearing sandals either.
If you can't get
closed shoes nations.
Maybe they're all closed shoes now after all of that stuff that we left behind, so you don't know. There were sanctions and whatever else. So I do think that we are seeing the kind of the worm turn, and I think that Cold War thing is going to be,
Do you mean Cold War thinking? Cold War thinking and Cold War posturing. Yeah.
The sanctions, the weaponry, the doctrine. I see things changing, and I do. You have to hand it to the guy that's the president of Ukraine, man. He's not backing down. He is using the rhetoric, but he's staying there. I don't want to ride. I want ammo, which is another silly one even here. I don't know how we're going to send them ammo. We banned the import of Russian ammunition a while ago.
American bullets don't fit AK-47s.
Exactly. We can't send them 5.56,
yeah, AK's a 7.62 by 39.
7.62 like ours, yeah. 7.62.
Although didn't they, because now supposedly the Russians have all been outfitted with the AK-12. And is that the same round? I don't know.
Do you think they'd really be using NATO ammunition?
No, they're not using NATO ammunition. So that's a problem. And we don't, maybe I hear the Afghanis are having a garage sale, and maybe they can buy some military.
Looks like the Russians have driven quite a bit of it in already, though, doesn't it? Looks like the Russians got to the line first. A lot of Hummers have gone in, and a lot of other stuff's gone in.
Well, my hat's off to them if they could get those started. When I worked for the Army, they were like, "Hey, there was a whole yard of Humvees."
They will send them to Russia to get Lada motors put in, and they'll be fine.
Probably to make them more reliable, because they were like, "You can have all of them if you want them. You can have whatever one you want." I'm like, "All right, well, okay. I guess we'll take that one over there." And I had my guy go over there and try and bring it over. So we worked through this line of Hummers. We couldn't get any of them running. And I'm like, it's all right. We'll walk.
No, it's a terrible, terrible, terrible situation that we mustn't make light of in any way. It's just slightly baffling from what we're seeing. It's just a little bit strange. And perhaps that is just the fear, uncertainty, and doubt created by propaganda from both sides at the moment.
Because these people making these decisions have never actually, they went around the Second World War. They haven't seen what real war's like, have they?
Well, yeah.
There's been skirmishes, but nothing of the scale of World War II.
Well, and the other thing is the same people that you're talking about, I don't think understand. And I mean, mainly my focus today, and I hope nobody thinks I was making light of war, because it's a horrible, terrible thing, and it should be avoided at all costs, of course. But those same people that you're talking about, Bruce, are the same people that don't understand the off-the-shelf technology and what it can do. And we're seeing that today. And it's the same thing in the governments that are trying to regulate this stuff and everything else. That is the failure. People don't understand the technology, applications, and how it can be used and fielded. So that's what to me is very interesting, is this cheap off the shelf stuff and how it is blunting the traditional Cold War doctrine.
And you got to wonder too, if you look at like the F-35 and the other lemons that have been sold to the US government, how many lemons have been sold to the Russian government? This piece of military equipment will do this, that, and the other. But in fact, it's just a complete waste of time. All the oligarchs are pocketing the money, and when called on to use them, they fall back to Chinese radios and consumer drones.
Oh, that's back to Gary's point about the corruption, and
yeah,
I mean we've got that here in the United States. There's issues.
Well, we've got it here, but it's everywhere, though. It's absolutely everywhere.
New Zealand ranks lowest in the world on the corruption index because we're very good at covering it up.
Well, there you go. Yes.
What was the name again, Bruce?
But yeah, what was it? It was very good. Look, we're just coming up to an hour. Let's see if we can do an hour. Has there been any hobby droney things? I see again, staying on the Mavic. It's almost certain that the ADSB in has been balked on the Mavic 3 in the last update.
You say that like it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because it sets off too many false alarms and people get desensitized to it, and that's not good.
Fair enough. Well, there's that one.
Do you think it's
Ian's go on, mate.
Necessary? I mean, I think this thing has been totally overblown.
I think on a single aircraft, no. I think, and I'll bias because we set one up here, but if you've got multiple receivers so you can see a great deal of away and you can see low-level tracks further away, then yes. But that thing that's going to come around the hill at low level to hit you, you're not going to see it.
It's his own fault for coming around the hill at low level.
Well, that's the
I was
only thing to worry about.
talking to a guy with a paraglider on the weekend. And I said, do you follow the rules? He goes, I always follow the rules when people are looking.
Yes. Quite
so. That's about sums it up, doesn't it?
Quite
so. And I put it on YouTube. And I'm looking for 17 million views.
Did they arrest that guy that just crashed his plane? I've forgotten his name now. Is he in prison yet?
I haven't heard.
No, the last I heard, they were going to look into it.
Yeah.
It'll take a year at least.
I'm more interested in the Joby incident myself.
Oh, yes.
I want to know. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that was probably catastrophic for the vehicle or the aircraft itself. I'm interested to see how they massage that. I posted an article today on LinkedIn. It was back from August, and oh god, no, it was all it was coming up good. And it also in the investors were people from LinkedIn and some other technology businesses that have voices. Which is for me is not encouraging because really all I'm seeing is another flim-flam, where they're doing the snake oil thing.
Well, I thought it was interesting with that one that they instantly reported it to their investors. It must have been quite a big accident if they're instantly making whatever statement by law you have to make when you have investors. So I was like, it wasn't just a gentle nudge.
And remember what happened to GoPro with when the karma, the investors went, they went to the wall on that deal. It was going to be a class action lawsuit. So I think they have to be very careful. And I am telling people that too with the AM thing. You follow the snake oil people. If it's snake oil, somebody from another company that used copious amounts of snake oil moved on to a flying car company. Caveat emptor on that, and there's plenty of people that went to those companies and were, they all have fancy names and tons of money, and they're all, got big smiles on their faces and telling everybody they're going to be flying autonomous flying taxis.
I
right,
know,
Gary, next year?
Next year. It is next year, isn't it? They're supposed to be coming, isn't it? Or was it 25? I think it is next year, isn't it?
I see it going out to 2025.
Yeah. If anyone's after an M300 going very, very cheap. I know that if you have a word to some Ugandan fishermen, they might be able to pull it out the bottom of Lake Victoria for you, because I'm not going to name names. One day I will, the flipping outfit that I can't stand that really rips the ring out of things. But when you've got those QR codes, it'd be a really good idea not to print them on a sheet and then have the person at the other end 5 kilometers away not put any rocks or anything to keep them down, so that when your M300 arrives with a big delivery box, it doesn't go in the hover, because it's not really sure what that is there on the ground, because it's folded itself in half, sit there for 10 minutes, decide to return to launch, and then fall into Lake Victoria on the way back. I mean, that wouldn't be how you do it. And then have LTE comms to do nothing with, really. Very, very, very annoying incident up there to me that could have been completely avoided. But if you want an M300, there's one between some islands in Uganda in Lake Victoria, and it's probably floating.
I'll keep an eye on eBay. I'll keep an eye on eBay.
Keep an eye on eBay. But it really Well, the
Pickup
technology
only.
has been way, way, way oversold. Way oversold. The capabilities of what it could do for a really simple delivery as well. So anyway, I've got to get off my high horse with that.
Yeah, the AAA meeting at the FAA was all about, most of it was about the advanced aerial mobility, and LA, the woman from Los Angeles is doing all this planning and everything, and it's like suddenly, because it's electric powered, it's going to do what helicopters never did.
Well,
yeah, I know. I said on LinkedIn, my favorite place to annoy people. I said there was some rendering from Westlands, and it was the specs of an EH-101, their sort of Merlin helicopter, but electric and whizzy-whizzes. So, well, why is this different to a Merlin? Why can't we just have a Merlin, which exists now, and is certified?
I'm going to have to get over to LinkedIn and try that, Gary. That sounds enticing. Maybe some annoys some people, but
really easy.
I know it is, but the AAM thing is so funny. It's funny that you say that, Bruce, because if you look at the first iteration of that, they had Los Angeles helicopters and they had AAM before, and the infrastructure was like a bus stop. And it was made of plywood, and it had a little bench, and this helicopter would land in the parking lot, and you'd get on board and you'd fly to Orange County or wherever, and it was subsidized because they were carrying the mail, and I don't know if it was on the ticket that you shouldn't smile while the helicopter's landing unless you want rocks in your teeth, but whatever, it's a by the by, Anyway, it was subsidized. The infrastructure was these little plywood, benches and whatnot. And now we're talking about, building these. You've seen the renderings of these urban, transport, glass and steel, and oh my God, and all the flagpoles for you to hit on the way in, and so where are these going to be? They're going to be everywhere. Then. I'm looking at this Joby article, and they're like, every aircraft will make 40 flights a day, and then you have these companies that have two-seaters, right? And it's like, okay, well, if you have one seat and you have a pilot, and then so 4 times going to make 160 flights a day to where, and how is this going to make any money?
But isn't the whole thing that they're pilotless? Isn't it the thing that they're automatic? And the thing that strikes me about that is, would you fly with an operator that has no skin in the game?
Well, only if it's the same guy that from Pakistan that drove the Uber to the vertiport. And if he's flying, I'm good. He's a little angry, but he knows what he's doing. He's an aggressive driver. No, it's crazy talk. And that whole idea that it's going to be autonomous anytime in our lifetime. You guys want to weigh in on that? I mean, that is so.
No, I use that exact same frame set, not in my lifetime, and people get quite angry if you say that.
They'll take a hit out on you, Gary.
That's because they're trying to sell snake oil. There's any AAM company that is like, oh, we got the 2-seater and it's going to be autonomous. As far as I'm concerned, you're peddling snake oil because it's just going to be so far until
it shows you the lack of due diligence that investors do, though, doesn't it? I mean, they wouldn't have to do much actual research to realize how pie in the sky these dreams are and how their money's going to go out the window long before they can reach possibility of even being commercially implemented, let alone profitable.
And you would think there would be smart people. I've done that with I had the guy years ago from BlackRock. Oh yeah, blah blah blah. I'm like, you want to make a bet? Write me a check for 140 mil. Let's see if we can make this deal work. There is no due diligence as far as that's concerned. In my estimation, a lot of this new technology. It's the same thing with that woman that got busted for the blood testing kit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly the same. Sadly, it is. It is exactly the same.
It is. I mean, nobody was like, "Hey, man, okay, this just sounds too good to be true." It's like fusion or something. Yeah, we got fusion. Okay, it's only for
but to be fair, fusion's only about 10 years away now.
Yeah, 10 years away is it now? It's only 10 years away. Only 10 years away.
Yeah, well, it's the cooling thing that I mean, it's how you work out. Besides that, it works great. But so even this deal, everybody, this was heralded as a groundbreaking, whatever else. Where was the due diligence before people were just shoveling money in there? And
well, I think the biggest problem with it is it's taking the air out of stuff that might work, which would be, say, the 150 kilo delivery thing on the edge of town between warehouses.
It's kind of like it has to be shiny or pretty. That attracts the people. And one thing that really annoyed me, going back to this war thing, the papers carried a whole lot of stories on this actor reacts to the war, or this celebrity reacts to the war. Why should I give a damn what someone thinks about the war just because they're famous? I mean, their opinion's worth no more than anybody else's, but it's all superficial.
Their opinion's worse, and that is another selling the propaganda thing, And that is another problem that we have. It's not a controlled message anymore. But anyway, do your due diligence before you invest your millions, or just send me a check, and I'll do it for you.
Send it to Patrick. It's a much safer bet.
Exactly, and I do take bad checks
because you're going to lose it. Whereas in the other way, there's always a chance. Go for the certainty.
No, interesting conversation today, and I do think that in the future we're going to have to follow up on this and see what happens with this. Let's say democratization.
Should we start a scoreboard as to all the ventures and how we can rank them every week, the new ventures that come along, and give them an anticipated lifetime, and then we can go back year after year and look at our scoreboard so that investors come to us and say, "You guys know what you're talking about. Have some money."
I've thought about doing something like that and voting with our dear viewers as well, and having like an opinion poll and a talk through of what we think. I have thought about doing that because there's some monumental numbers coming out of people that claim to be drone forecasting sort of agencies or whatever you will now, and then companies pin to their press releases that they're ranked number 47.4 in the whatever ranking thing. It's like, and it's just tosh. It's just
they're a bunch of rankers.
They're a bunch of rankers. Very good. Very good.
All right. On that note, I got to go to work. But
all right,
interesting conversation, and definitely let's we do have to follow up on this.
We should do something like that. We should do something like that. All right.
I like to harken back to the days of the Misomatic.
Yes. yes.
That was a good one, and we could do that too. Maybe we should do that on when it's going to be certified to fly, when it's going to be certified to fly unmanned, full NAS integration, 2047.
The next one that pins a tail on a donkey of a date, we'll do that. The next one that gives us a date, we'll do that. We'll put it on the side. All right, Patrick. I think I'll bin this as well. So, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, thanks very much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Hopefully, maybe things will calm down a little bit more. I doubt if you're in Ukraine watching, but if you are friends or family that are there, we wish them well. Our love and support from this side, and let's hope it's all over very, very soon. See you all next week. Cheers for now. Bye bye.
Peace, love, bell beads.
Exactly.